Good morning, my name's Tom Langston and with me is Stuart Sims. We're here to look at using Nearpod to facilitate live and remote sessions. Depending on how you have your grid view set out, Stuart did just wave to say hello. For those that have just joined, if you want to go to a new internet tab and use join.nearpod.com and enter that code CGKWX, it is also at the top. You'll be able to see kind of how Nearpod would work in a, as it is now, live setting. Bear in mind that normally as a presenter, what I would not do is share my screen in this way. For the simple fact that as we go through and you see certain bits, it'll display everyone's taking part's name, which I'd be able to see down here. Now normally with Nearpod, the idea is it's pushing it to your device only, and anything that you do is anonymous to the student. So yes, I think Stuart is adding that now. Thank you. So we'll start with another slide, another title slide, for the simple fact that this one was built within Nearpod itself. So you can, as you can see, add GIFs and animations that from the one that I imported previously from PowerPoint, which again was a static PowerPoint anyway, but being that it has been brought in from PowerPoint, it is just a PDF. It's essentially a copy of a PowerPoint. So if you ever use a PowerPoint with inside Nearpod, it does lose that kind of animation, although create something within Nearpod itself and it will do a live kind of feeling. So we thought we'd start with the question of what is audience response in this respect. So it's a tool, as you see, to facilitate interaction with the audience. It's a fairly simple title, really. What you have now within the Nearpod itself is these are all the different tools that are available within Nearpod. So as you can see, for creating stuff for either live or for asynchronous sort of sessions, there is a whole range of content. And again, I'll go through some of these ideas and show you an idea I have about it. But the good bit here is, for instance, if you're teaching in the sciences, or if you're showing off something that has maybe multiple angles. I always use radiography. If you have an X-ray or something, you could load all of the photos of that X-ray into this, and again you are able with your own Nearpod slides to scroll through them and look at them at your pace. So then as the academic, I could say, right, if you'll go to slide 6 and then talk around whatever that is. If you're doing that in PowerPoint, what would happen would be it would have to either be lots and lots of small images, or you'd have to go through them and you may not need all of the particular slides that you were trying to demonstrate at that particular point. So I just wanted to start by asking how many people have used audience response in their teaching. We've got 30 seconds, so I'll start the activity. Five seconds left. Perfect. For those that have used Nearpod, you'll know that, again, what I'm showing here is the teacher sort of back end, so I see the names. However, from the screen that you see as a student, you wouldn't normally see that. And equally, what I'm able to do is share that, and you can now see the percentage graph. So it's a fairly even split, but nearly 50% of people have used audience response in their teaching before. Again, what we'll do is wait till the end and we can have a discussion about what you may have used and any questions you may have for us about that. So while using audience response, you can obviously, as I'm doing right now, using it synchronously in a class environment. And this time to climb inside of Nearpod is essentially like Hoot, basically a very simple quiz functioning tool. Allows for anonymous interactions, and again, this one here is like a post-it note board, which again is very similar to Padlet. Padlet is a much better version of this, but again for us Nearpod has it kind of combined within that. But what we'll sort of hopefully look over in a little while is that inside of a Moodle session as well, and how to then sort of build that into your teaching going forward. So it's a good way of engaging the audience. You know, people get a chance to interact with the subject, either ask questions or test their knowledge as they're going through it. And again, as I mentioned, there is a whole variety of different styles of interactions that we have within Nearpod. It is from we offer a sort of, at the moment we will be offering, from as soon as we get the full paid license of everything, but we'll be offering Vvox, Nearpod and Padlet to university staff. Nearpod, we have 300 licenses. The others will be site licenses. And what this will mean is you'll be able to do different kind of aspects of audience response. Nearpod has the most in it. So again, could feel like the most daunting, but actually it is hopefully a fairly simple interface. But again, I know people who have kind of issues with it. And then again, we can sort of open that up at the end and discuss how you might use certain tools for different things. So again, if you're using this asynchronously, what you can do is, as well as use Moodle for this, but it's that sort of part of using audience response to check understanding of concepts, give people that kind of live feeling of how to deal with the subject matter and get them to make sure that they understand everything that you are trying to sort of help them with.
Tom, if you don't mind me cutting across you, I realise how hard it is to co-present miles apart from each other. But I think that's one of the advantages for Nearpod for me, is that if you just try and think about it, replacing the kind of things that we're missing in face-to-face teaching, because one thing I've had lots of discussions with colleagues about in the last 4 months or so is that lack of presence. And I'm feeling it to some degree now, because I can see about 5 or 6 of you with your cameras on, but the rest of you, there might be photos, there might just be an initial or what have you. And Nearpod is obviously, it's a bit more artificial. It doesn't have that same just instinctual tacit understanding you have when you're reading a classroom and you're looking at people and saying, oh, they don't look like they're getting it, or everyone's ticking along nicely. So you sort of have to take a bit of a step back and deliberately think of the kind of things you might just be used to be doing just as part of your usual experience, the fact that you're used to teaching in this way. But the fact it's got a multitude of tools means you can also break up the session quite successfully. So you're not going to disengage students by always using just one poll. You've got a lot of different options. So as Tom says, it can be quite daunting. I remember being quite daunted the first time I opened Nearpod, but once you get used to it, and start to relate it to the kind of things you might do instead if you were just in a face-to-face situation, I found it quite intuitive.
And with that nicely segueing to this is a collaborate board within Nearpod. What I'd like you to do is what you have previously found demonstrates an engaged audience. And again, please highlight any good or bad experiences that you've had, what has worked for you in the past. And we can again use this as a discussion tool as well, where we're able to get people's opinions on things. So again, feel free to start adding to that. Now, the other nice bit about Nearpod, and here's that bit again, like Stuart sort of said, it's very sort of daunting. I've got nothing coming up, and I have no idea whether people have done it. If it looks like you expect people to have put something on and something isn't working, because it's web-based and not necessarily hosted by you. Oh, they are coming through now, but you can just refresh your browser, and what it will do is it will refresh it for you, not for everybody else, even as the presenter, and it will then bring me back in exactly where I'd left off presenting, he says, hopefully. And again, the nice bit here is for you on your screens, it will be anonymous. You'll see all these post-it notes, but it will be anonymous. To get into the Nearpod session, if you go to join.nearpod.com, and the code is CGKWX at the top, if you'd still like to join in. What you're also able to do is select the heart and sort of favorite posts, and I can filter that now to likes, so it will change that. I think that is a key bit of kind of most audience response systems, unless you choose not to be, but that's the anonymity side of things. As Kayla puts, they're not afraid to put something and get it wrong. They're not afraid to take part and see that. I also like, Philip's post there, the noise or lack of it in the room. It is very disconcerting, as I'm sure you've all now been through with that side of kind of conversation. I've had some sessions in my training where everyone's been muted like we are today. I've unmuted at the end of it, and again, this was using WebEx Training Center, but you unmute and suddenly there was a cacophony of noise from everyone, but not the kind of good discussional chat. It was kids in the background, and again, we're all facing a very different way of teaching and a very different approach to this, which is where we're going to get onto in a second, with making this kind of asynchronous and trying to build resources in a maybe slightly different way. And this is where Nearpod, I think, is the best of the audience response systems for that. I'm seeing a very sort of standard feel between a lot of the things, again, students asking questions, get like again the face-to-face bit that we lose. That's a very good point. The need to care, the care is need to care for is not basically not overusing this type of technology. It is definitely something that we need to consider how we are going to do these things. I fully agree with we shouldn't be just shoehorning technology into our teaching for the sake of using technology. It's there to support what you're trying to do as academics and as teachers, as educators, and maybe Stuart would like to step in here as well. But it's where using it where it is supportive, but not using it where it, like was mentioned, is overused. Stuart, have you any comments on that?
No, agreed completely. And I think that one of the most important things for me when I've got used to using these kinds of tools is to, I suppose, get past the novelty value of it. And that can be challenging, because particularly when they've got lots of bells and whistles. I think in the past I've run some sessions which were more entertaining for me than they were the students, perhaps, because I was quite keen to try everything that a bit of software had. But as I said, it's about thinking about what it's replacing that you would do in the classroom. And there's some great examples of typical things on here, giving people a chance to ask questions. So this kind of board, we've asked you a question and invited your responses, but flip it on its head, it could be open, what kind of things do you want to ask about a topic? And then the anonymity of that is quite advantageous for students. And a lot of the research in this area shows that this benefits some students, because those who are a bit more introverted, may not be the ones putting their hand up or shouting across a classroom, can be more engaged in this attempt. But certainly, I don't think, and I hope Tom would agree, we're not forcing anyone to use Nearpod in a way that they're not comfortable with. And we've planned a whole session where we can sort of get you working through Nearpod, but also see how it works on the back end. You don't have to use these things for a whole session as well. They can be, you use one tool, maybe at a halfway point during a break to give people space to talk through things. But letting the technology lead the way is the tail wagging the dog. It's about you thinking about what you need, and then maybe coming and have a discussion with people in TEL or AcDev about, or your own online course developers in your faculties about what's going to fill that gap. So not focusing on, I need something that's going to do a poll. What is that poll for?
I see a few questions sort of coming out as well. So starting with Ian's, can you have videos talk in a synchronous Nearpod? No, Nearpod is not designed to be the chat tool. It's designed to be the presentation tool. So it's like PowerPoint doing that. So you would still need a Google Meet, a WebEx, a Zoom, whatever. Again, that is conferencing software, whichever one you want to kind of brand and use. This is presentation software with audience response as well. I haven't actually put it into this. I'm not sure I can do it on the fly. Add an activity, no. So you can see that I can add activities as I'm going, but the one I can't add is video. The one I haven't got in here I don't think is video, but this is where, for me, Nearpod beats other sort of sides of this, is where people want to use video within the presentation. If you're doing it in PowerPoint as you may have traditionally done, or you're sharing your screen as you might do within Google Meet or something, I'm sure many of you have seen that problem of sort of streaming out the video. So it's like either a jerky video or they can't hear the sound, again, depending on the system that you use. There is a whole range of sort of different problems there. Whereas because this is pulling it from a cloud-based central point for Nearpod, when you get to a video slide, again in class, it would ask you as a presenter, do you want to give everyone the rights to play this? Now in class you may not want that because it would get noisy quickly. However, here I'd go yes, you could then all watch that 3-minute video that needed to be watched, but it's doing it directly from YouTube without any kind of latency, so there's no sort of streaming buffering issues, and it does look sort of very good there. So they are two very different bits of software. Peter, maybe we can get students to set up a Nearpod themselves. They will have access to Nearpod using the silver license, so essentially anyone can create a Nearpod. However, because we only have 300 licenses for users, we can only provide them to people with an @port address. So the highest level would essentially be those research students who are actually employed with an @port address. And like I say, when we run out of our 300 licenses, we then have the headache of trying to manage those people that are or aren't using it. Shelley, can you have something like a normal PowerPoint presentation which includes a link out to a Nearpod? You could do, but it becomes slightly more problematic. We have another solution to that, which would be Vvox, but we're covering that later in the week. So, spoiler, there's something later in the week. But basically, yes. So you could have one of the ways I suggest you, if you don't want to add your entire slides like I did within this, so like here, that was just a PowerPoint I created that I uploaded to inside the Nearpod element. You could have Nearpod set up to only have the polling feature, so you're doing the presentation, but on their device you just have the interactions, so that you kind of get around it that way. So yes, what you would do is your first slide would be on your PowerPoint, where we go to join.nearpod and give them the code. They have it on their phone or other device, and you present as you would do normally on PowerPoint. And again, that could work both sort of as we are now, or for when you're back into kind of the traditional teaching rooms. Can students upload imagery? Yes, they can. Again, if I go to the slideshow and share this, there is one here. Well, there's kind of two. Within the Collaborate board, you can choose to upload an image as well, so you don't have to upload just text. I'll go back to that Collaborate board I've got set up, and we can try that. But also within there's a tool called Drawit. Now this one I've got set up would be to say, it's a very arbitrary thing of like circle all the people wearing glasses, but you can essentially using Microsoft Paint create a white slide, save that as a white slide, upload that, and then get them to draw or upload an image. And again, they have those sort of functions here. So if you're on slide 4 using this, just to follow along, you can see the 4 photos of the people, but you also have the highlighter tool, the pen tool, the text tool. But the fourth one along from the left is the upload an image tool. So again, you could get the student to upload images and work from there. So yes, you can add images for discussion, and the students could do that as well. Catherine, I tried using Nearpod in one Google window and the presentation in another split screen, but it automatically cancelled one. I'm not quite sure I understand. There is a function, if you are doing it across two screens, where you can switch to student view. So this is what a student would see. But then I can do in a separate window, and so now I can I could leave one there and then drag the other to the other screen.
Just to answer that, I had two Google Chrome windows open. I wanted the WebEx in one, so I could see that, and I wanted the Nearpod in the other, so I was live on Nearpod. So just to see the kind of difference between the two. But it seemed to cancel the Nearpod one, and it brought it back into my, strangely, it went into my other Google Chrome page, my other kind of Google Chrome page. Because sometimes I'll have two Google Chrome pages on with different links and different kind of types. But it just seemed to automatically do it. I might click something by accident. I don't know.
There is, with both Google Meet and with WebEx, there is the facility of sharing an application and sharing a screen.
Yes.
So if you're sharing an application, it may not share the right bit of the application that you're asking it to share. Obviously, I can't answer it directly, but it should.
It does that with WebEx. But what happens when that happens in WebEx, where the student can share and we can share, they can share something they've got, a bit of software. And let's say it's a PowerPoint, for example, but it could be a drawing package. It gets confused sometimes in the tools. So the drawing tools in WebEx, because we do a lot of drawing kind of response, it will take over. Either, let's say it's in Photoshop, it will let those tools take over, and then you have to go back. So you have to shut down the tools and open them again to get back into using the WebEx tools. So it kind of gets confused which tools are dominant. That's what I've noticed. That's all.
Yeah, I think that's more of a WebEx or Google Meet issue than it is a Nearpod issue. But I take the point that yes, obviously using 5 different bits of software now to try and do a presentation where once you'd have just been in front of people is potentially problematic. Like I say, from my side of Nearpod, I'm sharing my screen today, but actually I don't need to. If I stop sharing the screen, you still have the presentation. So from that element, you can kind of get round the sharing by they only open up a Nearpod window and see what they would see within that itself. And so the WebEx and the Google Meet are purely just the voice chat version of that. But again, for then doing drawing stuff, that then comes to, as I say, the activity of a Drawit tool. And so you can do a sort of a photo, a screenshot, add that into as a Drawit activity, and they will annotate it. Can I add one of those in now? I can. Here we go. If I add a Drawit now, so I'm going to add an image. Let's see what images I have on my hard drive. Probably going to be, there we go. So add a camera. So if I share this activity on the fly, what you should now have is the ability to draw and annotate. So I could say, please write your thoughts on photography, and what you should be able to see from mine is I have all the little sort of squares. Now again, managing this for sort of even what we've got here, 59, 60 people, is going to be sort of kind of hard to try and manage this many people at once. I appreciate that, but just in terms of what you could do, and this is where we're going to sort of flip in a minute to the asynchronous model of this, where actually we can use Nearpod with this kind of tool, but have it within Moodle. And again, I'll So what I can see is I can see who's doing it, who's in progress, and it will then give me who's submitted as we're going. So for those that do need some sort of annotation, the Drawit within Nearpod may help get around that screen share annotation that Catherine was talking about. The book, Penny, is Research Methods for Education in the Digital Age. I believe I have the University Library copy in my hands, so sorry about that. I think you can get it online as well. I have got the references slide at the end of this as well. So there we go. I can now share out Heather's to everybody, and there we go. Now, if I go back to the Collaborate, just again, feel free to try this. You can use this icon down the bottom right to also like search Google Images or upload an image from your computer. So again, for those people that are wanting that kind of getting a student to upload some sort of something they've created, they could do that through that photo side of it there. So again, if they right, to move this on, there you go, Stuart. Thank you, Stuart. Uploading a random image. So you can see there that students could very easily upload an image as well. So there are my references. Again, I have the PowerPoint of this as well that I created, so I can make that available after the session. We'll send that out, and I can again give people a link to this if they wish. What I wanted to kind of go to is, and again, being this is about blending the classroom, what I think Nearpod does better than any other audience response system is take it offline. There is, for those that haven't used Nearpod before, I used Live Lesson and was presenting the session we've just done as a live lesson. There is also a student-paced version. So as you can see here, I have a code and I can view progress. So what I will do is send this in the chat. You should be able to self-enroll on this course if you wish. Oh, blimey, there's a whole load more stuff coming up. So Leah, essentially I have access to the basic people have emailed either eLearn or myself for access to Nearpod. We've had Nearpod for 6 years within the university, so it's essentially we've built up the amount of people that are using it. If you email me, I will add you. The problem, like I say, only comes when I hit that 300, and it's then a question of like managing usage. But for you at the moment, I have about 100 left, just under 100 left. So anyone that wants to use it, if you email eLearn or myself, I can make sure that we distribute over the coming weeks people's access to Nearpod, and you can then start using it for your teaching as well. So here is a virtual training site that I've created, and again it's where I run my WebEx sessions for my training. At the top I have a Moodle book called Creating Blended Content. So I'm going to open this and you should be able to follow this on screen. You're able to provide information, and again for those that were able to get into Mike's session earlier on, there's that how to use, and he's doing it through the week as well, so you'll be able to attend it again, but how to use the Moodle template. As you can see, I've got some text with a quote. I found these two and I kind of laughed at them. So respect your parents, they passed school without Google, and I learned from the mistakes of people who take my advice. So yeah, So please do take my advice and let me know where it's never going to be used again. But you as a student are able to go to this Moodle site and work through at your own pace and do the materials as you get to them. There's an audio file I've uploaded, and again, these are all external to Nearpod. This is just what I've done within Moodle itself. However, there is a section here called Nearpod as an activity. So what happens is it gets to that slide, or section of the Moodle book at least. And what I've done is using the embed code from Moodle, and again, I will demonstrate this in a moment. He says, I think it's because I'm recording this in Camtasia as well as a backup, as well as using Google Meet and Moodle and yeah. So I have welcome to the session as a student, so they join the session. And what I've done is, rather than having the full kind of presentation again that you would normally do with kind of just giving them the PowerPoint, it is basically a singular package for people to do. So it's got a title slide, and again, I've done this one as offline, but obviously you still technically need to be online to use it. What I've done is uploaded an article that I want them to read, or something that this is basically just a PDF that's been uploaded inside the Nearpod environment. I've then added an open-ended question. So all the while this is going on, what you can see is the students that are joining the session. And so this is, like I say, in the back end of your kind of Nearpod, it is done under an individual code. So I could run this and embed it in 5 different Moodle sites, but each session could have a different code, so I can track the students separately in each unit, but still only have created one session. I don't need to duplicate it, I can just use it again. So into the right place. So here is the session. As I say, I can create a student paste one. I can create a new student paste code. It gives me 29 days as the minimum. If I click on that, what I'm able to do is take that through up to a year. I'm going to take it to January the 15th. So I've got 185 days remaining on that code. Apply that. And now I will have 2 student codes. Again, go back to student paste here. I can see both of the codes. This is the one that's embedded in my Moodle book at the moment. If I select that and choose view progress, I'm able to follow that progress of the students over the course of time. So there you are. I can, again, it's done to be anonymized students, but I can show the student's name as well. So if I go back to here, what are the codes? The student would submit that. They can also go back and edit their answers if they need to. And what we'll see then is the answers populate here for me. So again, I can investigate these, excuse me, at any time that you need. Now, the one that, it disappeared on me. There is one in here which it's not going to show me at the moment because it's, like I say, doing too much at once. It's called a FlipGrid, and what this does allow for is students to basically record video. So if I view this particular FlipGrid, and I'm not expecting anyone to do it now, but I would then see all of the students' FlipGrid videos as they've come in. There you are. they will just click login with Google, and it'll automatically take them to the site. Now, someone put as in, and then there's a video at the end, and again, that's the nice bit of not having to rebroadcast the video. Someone did put in the open-ended chat bit, sometimes there are too many options, and I completely agree. There are lots and lots of different options that you can use, and this kind of comes back to our point where it's picking the right thing for you for that reason. I am obviously throwing an awful lot of different tools at once into one session, but what I would suggest is where you're creating a blended piece of content, you don't have to add anything more than read this article and then do this questionnaire or do this poll or do this. It's kind of that bit of, you need to kind of look into Nearpod yourself, and again, I'm more than happy to have a conversation about this after today as well. But it's that kind of idea that I'm trying to achieve X, what's the best way to do it? And it's like, well, if you're doing it as a blended activity, provide it here and maybe use this tool, maybe use that tool. Like I say, the nice bit about Nearpod is it does embed and you can have a range of tools. So this is back to that point of, so Shelley's just asked a question, does Nearpod record sessions or will we need to capture it? With Camtasia, yes, you'd need to capture it. Nearpod is not a recording function. Nearpod is a presentation tool that does audience response. So in what I'm showing you here, this is it. It doesn't record. You can, this is where it gets mildly annoying. Within Nearpod, you can upload a recording of your voice. So you could do a verbal, I'd like you to do this as an activity, and then set an activity. But if you're doing it for just being a pure video, then you'd need to use Camtasia. So I'm recording today's session with Camtasia, with Relay, so that we have a backup recording as well as what we're recording within Google Meet. But Nearpod itself is not a recording tool. Nearpod is purely a way of creating activities and doing presentations in a slightly different format. Like I say, what you need to do is pick your comfortable level of, this is too much for me, and that's fine. But it may be that you may not want to use this to present, you may just want to set a singular activity. And as Catherine, I think, put, it's really useful for a student timed activity because you can set time limits on certain bits.
What it does record, which is a different way of interpreting the word record, I suppose, as you've shown a few times, Tom, which I like most about it, is who has done it. So it's another way of simulating that classroom experience of seeing if people are actually working on things. So you can, if you ask students to log in and then unanonymize some of the activities, you can see who's filled out a poll, which there are some ways you can do this in Moodle sometimes, but in my experience, it's a more circuitous process. And I think Nearpod just streamlines these sorts of things in a way that makes it work. So you can actually see what students are doing things, which I think we're all missing at the moment.
Exactly, it's nicely self-contained, but it isn't something that is it is a presentation tool. It's not something else, and it's a presentation tool, sorry, that has interactions that you can build in. And from my point of view of why I've always kind of championed Nearpod is because of a range of things that it has, where some presentation tools only do a simple thing, just one thing, like maybe a poll. That's great if you want to do a poll, but if you want to do more than that, well, that's all it did. Equally, though, I fully appreciate that because it does so many things, you can get bogged down in that mindset of I've got to use all this, I've got to make sure I'm using everything, and it's like, actually, that, like Stuart says, that's not the point. The point is we take what we need to achieve the best results for the students. Pulling up Peter's comment here as well. We could use Nearpod for staff consultation in meetings where there are, say, 20 staff. Yes, it doesn't have to be just a traditional student-facing one. It can be anyone that's in that presentation. So whatever you want to do, yes. And then obviously there are different ways of getting that. I think Vvox also does this, and again, we're doing this session later in the week, But Vivox also has a really good chat thing, and again, I think it works very nicely for conferences in a very different way to the way Nearpod would. So again, it's that kind of picking the right tool for the right job, and that might be that you only use Nearpod once for one thing. Don't necessarily shoehorn it into everything you do, but if it fits one purpose, use it then. You may want to use Vivox for another, and again, it's hard where we have that sort of situation where some students are saying, we get shown too many things, we only want one route into this. But then you also get the students going, we want an all singing, all dancing blended experience because we don't want to just PowerPoint, voice over PowerPoint. And it's a very hard sort of balancing act that I think everyone has to try and achieve, which is providing enough of it not being just voice over PowerPoint, although I still think that has its place for certain things. But equally, and again, Stuart, maybe you could jump in here on this, where you've been building your communications course that's been going out. It's trying to use lots of different tools to show there are different ways of communicating. So again, if I hand to you a second.
Yeah, I think it's related to a question that Michaela's raised here about what tools do you find students engage most with, and that's a tricky question, because and Tom, you're better at the evidence base for this, so feel free to correct me. But just in my own experience, I think students are better at using things like quizzes or the kind of Padlet note boards where you just write a little bit and stick it up like we had earlier. I think just because they're most used to them. So they're effective because I think they're fairly standard now. I think you'll probably encounter something similar, whether through your education or through other settings, whereas actually some of the other things like the FlipGrid that Tom has put up where you record a video might feel a bit different, although it's probably similar in principle to more social media tools, but needs more scaffolding. So if there's something which feels a bit adventurous to you, you probably need to take some time to familiarize yourself with it and think about what you want to get out of it, so you can then communicate that effectively to students. Whereas other tools, they're sort of self-evident, and I think most people can jump in and use them quite effectively. But the flip side, to the point that Tom and I and a few of you in the discussion have been raising, that you shouldn't always be led with the technology, is there is something to be said for the novelty value of trying something different. But you have to think about why you're using it, how you're using it, and be familiar with the ins and outs, so you can also scaffold that for the students when you plan to do so. And I think anything, there is too much of a good thing in face-to-face teaching as much as there is in online teaching. So using the same tool too much or too many tools, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't use variety. So maybe one session you use polls and another one you'll use something like the FlipGrid with the videos.
And before I just open up to any last questions, one other idea I've sort of developed here within Nearpod, using 3 essentially collaborate boards, but it's that start, stop, continue method. So what you can do is create this as 3 collaborate boards. So, they post a note, it's anonymous to other students. What do you want me to stop? What should I start? And what should I continue doing? What's working well? And it's just, again, that kind of giving that student the voice and the opportunity to mention, like Stuart kind of mentions, which tools are you finding most useful? Do I do too many Nearpods? Do you want more of those? And it's giving the student that voice to sort of say, this has worked really well. So you kind of know where to adapt materials and where to adapt your teaching to. And I fully appreciate at the moment, it's that really horrible bit where we're expected to sort of mostly teach in Teaching Block 1 online, but there are still some labs and certain amounts, as Paul mentioned first thing this morning, of face-to-face seminary type teaching going on. We're trying to make sure it's balanced if we do have to go back into another lockdown, sort of in a full sort of swing of things. You're trying to create resources now that you have no idea how they're going to work through the whole of Teaching Block 1, and you can't be expected to sort of suddenly sort of make something on the fly and change every week depending on what is being asked of you. So it really is kind of maybe have, like I say, an idea for the whole part of your teaching. Have a few ideas of how you could do that, because again, by doing it through a blending model, what we're able to do, and if I load up the preview site again within Moodle, What we have is lots of different ways of approaching the same bit of content. So again, within this, we have again lots of different ways of approaching and dealing with that content. So it's giving people a lot of opportunity to do different activities in the way that kind of meets their needs. And again, I fully appreciate that is an awful lot of work at the moment, but my point to finish on is once we've made good digital packages and good digital resources, they are there and will last you by minor tweaks year on year. Today it's a big headache. Next year it won't be. And again, feel free to speak to me, Stuart, all of the Tail team and Active team for ideas and things to try and help you and support you through this. Obviously, there's only a finite number of us, but again, any questions now, please, before lunch, do unmute yourself and did I see anything? H5P again is H5P is a different beast. It does things that Nearpod doesn't do. H5P isn't Nearpod does both the asynchronous and synchronous type of a presentation. H5P does not do live taught sessions in the same way, but obviously it is, as you say, it's an open source tool which is now even more ingrained into Moodle as of this coming year. So yes, H5P will provide a range of different ways of building an interactivity in the blended context. Again, it's picking the right tool for you. So Alexander, you're quite right. It might be worth investing your time in that. But for some people that have used Nearpod, they may very well want to just embed that in their teaching in another way as well. So it's not, this is kind of that problem, is it's not necessarily one is right or wrong, but they do have different kind of use cases for different things. Eilish has said Nearpod and Hoot have gone down well with students, which is good. Amy's mentioned if they load it onto their phones or their own device, it limits distractions with students. Which again, I had that when I was doing a session to her tech a couple of years back, where one academic came up at the end and said, I didn't check my email anywhere near like I would have done while doing your Nearpod session than I did through the others. Not that they weren't listening, but because their device had the Nearpod on it, they didn't feel the need to open up, and because they were looking at a presentation screen and their device. Avoiding over-investing is a concern. Can you explain, please, what you mean by that for me, Philip? Excuse my ignorance if you're still in the...
Hello, Tom.
Hello, mate.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Great. Okay. Yeah. No, I was saying that I was just thinking over-invested in creating these resources because it is tempting over the last few weeks. I've been really working on developing things, and you're going, gosh, I might only use this once, and it's choosing the right tool, how much to learn the tool, how to create the materials, and so on. And there's just just maybe avoiding putting too much time if we may never use it again.
Yeah, my hope would be that, as I say, by creating a good digital package, even once we're back to normal, whatever normal might be, but once we're back to traditional face-to-face teaching, there's no reason why those Nearpods, those H5Ps can't be used in the Moodle environment still. It's not like we're going to suddenly scrap all the work we've done. It's going to go alongside that face-to-face teaching. And again, with Nearpod, you can do some of it in class. Now, again, we've had chats before about love and hating Nearpod, and that's fine. But it's that kind of bit where it functions in both cases. So yes, you may never use it for your face-to-face teaching, but you may like it within your blended bit. Fantastic. It is being used to support the students' learning. And again, I like using it, and I've used it in some presentations I've given. I have no problem with it face-to-face, but I also see the arguments against it. And while I am an advocate, I'm also a realist. Wife says pessimist, I say realist. But I'm not going to convert everybody, but what I want you to do is just make sure that you're not dismissing things out of hand, but equally using the right tool for the right job. And that's what me and Stuart hopefully have kind of tried to get across today, is there are these tools that can be used. You may not want to use them all. That's absolutely fine. But if you can see value of using this for a particular reason, then that's the reason you should use it. If you can't, then don't. It saves you a headache.
Agree completely, Tom. I think it's one of the things I like most about Nearpod, and I'm not quite as big an advocate for it as Tom is. I'm more of a fan of VVox, as you'll see later in the week. But I think Nearpod's real strength is the student paced mode that you can do offline, because that can last for years to come if you set up the resources. While it might mean you need to dip in and tweak a reference here or there, as you would with slides that you're setting up for a face-to-face session. I think the fact that you can make sort of lasting resources in Nearpod is something that means investing a bit of time in that one. If this session has convinced you it's worthwhile at all, is probably something that I think is worth doing.
Well, thank you very much for everyone as attendance today. I hope you enjoy the rest of the week. There was lots and lots of wonderful sessions going on. Stuart and I are doing some others through the week around co-creation, as well as VVox as mentioned. So we hope to see you at those. But again, please do have a lovely week. And for those that can get Wi-Fi in their garden, enjoy being outside.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.